This weekend sets in motion a magical time of year when we search for perfect Christmas gifts and extend holiday greetings, when we adorn the places where we live and work with silver and gold, ornaments and lights, branches of holly and leaves of evergreen, all in preparation for the birth of Jesus. This week also starts a new year of grace, the 2024th since we started counting. And in addition to this, we begin a new liturgical season. And this means that we also begin exploring a new gospel, that of St. Mark. Now, one would think that we would start this wonderful period of anticipation and preparation for Christmas with the story of Christmas, right? I mean, after all, that's precisely how two of the Gospels start. St. Luke begins his with an archangel appearing to a young girl betrothed to a man of the house of David, whose name is Joseph. The girl's name is Mary. The archangel calls her full of grace and announces that she will become the virgin mother of a child who will be called the Son of God. 9 months later, another angel, accompanied by a multitude of heavenly hosts, proclaims good news of great joy to shepherds outside the little town of Bethlehem, and so announces to the world the birth of the Savior. St. Matthew, too, begins his with an angel, this time speaking to Joseph in a dream about the divine child growing in his young wife's womb, and also with the story of 3 wise men traveling from the faraway and exotic lands of the East, bringing precious gifts in homage to a newly born king. But today, we heard something very different from St. Mark, didn't we? Something having to do with the word Advent, which of course is derived from a Latin word meaning or referring to the arrival or the coming of someone. What we heard was spoken by Jesus Christ to his apostles only 2 days before the Last Supper, when they were together on Mount Olivet, opposite Jerusalem, preparing for his triumphal and final entrance into the holy city. It's part of the famous Olivet Discourse, where Jesus speaks about the future, what's going to happen after his passion and his death. He prophesies wars and rumors of war, the breaking out of strife and tribulation, the destruction of Jerusalem, the end of the world, and the passing away of heaven and earth, and the final coming, when the Son of Man, who has been given glory and kingship and an everlasting dominion that shall not be taken away, will come in glory on the clouds of heaven. So, this first Sunday of Advent, while you and I begin to prepare our homes and our hearts to celebrate the first Advent of Christ in the little town of Bethlehem, the church points our attention also to the second Advent of Christ, his coming in glory at the end of human history. Jesus' last words to his followers before going to his death are to tell them to watch, to be alert, to stay awake. Now, the disciples know Jesus is leaving them, but they expect him to return because that is what he told them many times in many ways. Yet, he never told them exactly when he would return. So he warns them not to lose their sense of expectation for him to return, not to become sluggish in faith and begin to doubt that he would ever come back. You do not know when the time will come, he says, but it will indeed come, he implies. Then, To give them an image of this that will stick in their minds, he does what he so often does. He tells a story, this time a short one. His own leaving and coming back one day is like the master of a rich house with many servants who leaves his home to go on a long journey. Before he departs, he puts his servants in charge, and each of them is assigned work to do in his absence. If the master of the house represents Christ himself, then, obviously, the servants represent the apostles, who, like the servants, will be left to take care of their master's interests while he is away. But the master of the house, like Christ himself, does not tell them how long he will be away or exactly when he will return. Instead, he tells his servants to always be on guard, to be always watching, especially the gatekeeper, who will be the first one to see him coming and the first one to welcome him home. They should expect their master's return at every moment and be ready to greet him whenever it may happen, whether in the evening or at midnight or at cockcrow or in the morning, Jesus says. Now, did you notice that the times he mentions are in the night or in the early morning? This indicates that he will come at an unexpected time, a time when we will not necessarily be ready, a time when we will be inclined to be asleep. And this is why Jesus ends his parable by exhorting his followers to stay awake in case he comes suddenly and finds them sleeping. This will not be the last time we hear this warning. In St. Mark's account of the Passion, Jesus likewise warns those accompanying him in the Garden of Gethsemane to stay awake. Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation, he says. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Indeed, our spirit is often willing, but our flesh is often weak. Today, my friends, you and I are invited to awaken to the wondrous reality of God the Son's first coming into our world, humbling himself to take on our human limitations, imperfections, and weaknesses, lowering himself to be born not in the comfort and glory of a palace, but in the poor simplicity of a stable. And Jesus urges us to stay awake, fully spiritually awake, faithfully watching and preparing ourselves every day for his return. Over 2,000 Christmases have come and gone, and we know that we are nearer the final judgment of humanity and the promised age of salvation than when Christians first believed. And each of us is certainly closer to the particular judgment of our own soul that comes after our last heartbeat. But are we really any more aware and prepared for this than the people of Jesus' day? The scriptures encourage us to know and to keep the Lord's commandments and teachings, especially those regarding the love we should have for God and each other. They tell us to live faithful and virtuous lives, steering clear of every behavior, every sinful behavior that can only separate us from God and from each other. But there is one more thing that is essential. And two questions that will lead us to it are, how real is Jesus Christ to me? And how much of my daily life do I share with him? As we recall Christ's first coming, how can we rouse ourselves and prepare for his second coming? Neither you nor I know the hour the Savior will come again to each of us. But that hour will arrive. And when it does, will Jesus recognize us as a friend and companion? Or will he say, I do not know you? As we begin our Advent journey, led by a brilliant star shining in the night over the little town of Bethlehem, let each step we take bring us closer to a real person who is not only our God and Lord, but also our truest friend and closest companion. Lying in a straw-filled manger, God the Son first opened his human eyes to look upon our world. This Christmas day, when we stand in spirit before that same poor crib, let us recognize and honor Christ's real presence in our hearts and in our lives, so that on the day when we stand before him again and look into those same eyes, Jesus will recognize in you and me a true friend whose life he has been pleased to share. Then he will open wide the hands pierced out of love for us and welcome us home.